Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham Recha Kodesh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Isaiah, the 56th chapter, rewards for obedience to God. And in Isaiah 56, as we'll go through, it really deals with the Lord exhorting Israel, right? That whether, you are a foreigner, okay, or a eunuch, or basically somebody that's lacking or without from the, say, like the commonwealth of Israel. But if you follow the Lord in the ways that are pleasing to him, you'll still gain that deliverance and that favor of the Lord. All right. And then finishing off with the speaking, okay, of basically the mindset and the energy of these false leaders and watchmen, so-called. So this is Isaiah 56:1. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, keep ye judgment and do justice, for my salvation is near to come. So it's here, it's encouragement to maintain, judgment and uphold the things that are right according to the ways of the Heavenly Father that he has commanded us, for his salvation is near, right? So the time of deliverance is almost here. And those that keep that judgment and do justice according to the ways of the Lord are the ones that are going to gain that salvation. So basically do that as the salvation is near upon us, that you may be able to be counted worthy to escape the judgments to come, and my righteousness to be revealed. And the righteousness of the Lord is going to be revealed both in his judgment, right? Because his judgment will be to purge the world of wickedness, of iniquity, and establish true righteousness upon the earth after that. Okay, so we're going to see that being revealed in these major prophecies, these last few prophecies that lead to that time of the kingdom of heaven, when the Lord sends Yahushai back to set things straight. Blessed is the man that doeth this, right? To do what? To keep the ways of the Lord, his justice, his judgment, his commandments, and the Son of Man that layeth hold on it, right? It's repeating the same thing, right? To lay hold on the ways of the Lord is to take heed to it and to follow it to the best of your ability, right? Not just to say or be a speaker of the word of the Lord, but also a doer. He that keepeth the Sabbath from polluting it, and keepeth his hand from doing any evil. Right, and we know the Sabbath is a day to be kept holy. Okay, so refraining from things that would violate the Sabbath, including things that would pollute you, make you unclean. One of the things being engaging in sexual intercourse, as the scriptures, explain that makes you unclean, right? And you're not supposed to do that on the Sabbath. Just one example. So those that honor the Sabbath, right? Those that keep their hand from doing any evil, which is to, not venture into any strange ways that would incur the wrath of the Lord. Blessed are they that do these things. Neither let the son of the stranger that hath joined himself to the Lord speak, saying, the Lord Yahweh hath utterly separated me from his people. Neither let the eunuch say, behold, I am a dry tree. Now, let's look up the word separate or separated definition. So it says here, cause to move or be apart, divide into constituent or distinct elements. And looking at these words here, right? Split up, break up, divide. The example use case is both owners were trying to separate the dogs, right? Now, the reason I brought this out is as we're going to go back into Isaiah 56, the strangers here, or the son of the stranger here, are dealing with Israelites, okay, or Israelite foreigners. those that were foreign to, you might say the Commonwealth of Israel, be it, whether they maybe didn't know they were Israelites or weren't keeping the customs or weren't born in the land. The Hebrew word here, nakar, as it says, foreign, alien, foreigner, that which is foreign. So when you even look at today's terminology, they call people that come from another country here aliens, right? Or foreigners. And sometimes they use the term illegal alien because they're not from here, right? But giving an example, you may have a, a German, right? Or an East Indian whose family maybe migrated here decades ago and has been living here, has like children and grandchildren and so on. So like that newest generation of them wouldn't be considered foreigners here, right? Because they were born here, they've grown up here, they have the citizenship and so on. But somebody else that may be East Indian that comes into the country, not through, the way I just described, they would be considered a foreigner, but they're both Indians, right? So when we go back to Isaiah 56, the son of the stranger is dealing with the, this is pretty cool. I didn't even know that they had this. So when you hover over a word, it shows you where it is in the Hebrew. Yeah, like here, son, you have in the Hebrew there, ban, and then stranger. Here it's hanakar, the stranger. That's interesting. I didn't know that they had that. But back to the point. So as it says here, neither let the son of the stranger that hath joined himself to the Lord speak. So these strangers are Israelites, right? And Israelites that, like I mentioned, may not have been born in the land or, may have come from another land or be strange to the traditions or the customs of Israel, being that they weren't, keeping it or born in there. So like an Israelite foreigner. And the point in this verse is they're Israelites, but because of the state or the condition they're in, don't be of the mindset, right? Ones that have joined themselves to the Lord, which that in itself is the first clue to let you know. Heathens, because when you go into the word joined, let me actually pull that up real quick. But this wouldn't be attributed to heathens. Heathens cannot be joined to the Lord. Now they can acknowledge the Most High as the true living power, right? And they can fear the Lord and they can serve the Lord as they will when the kingdom is implemented and instituted, but they will not be joined to the Lord, okay, as Israel is joined onto the Lord. And a quick precept for that is here in the book of, I guess I can use this one, Amos, the 3rd chapter, Amos 3:1. Hear this word that the Lord Yahweh hath spoken against you, O children of Israel, against the whole family which I brought up from the land of Egypt, saying, you only have I known of all the families of the earth. Therefore I will punish you for all your iniquities. And when you go into the word here, known, it's yadai, which is to know, to learn, to perceive, to consider, to be acquainted with, right? So this is similar to being joined to, and this wouldn't apply for heathens. Okay, so this is referring to an Israelite that is a foreigner. And similarly, in our time today, we are likened or were likened onto strangers because we weren't born knowing we were Israelites, right? The majority of us weren't born knowing we were Israelites, weren't born knowing these customs. We were strange, we were aliens to it. But through the spirit and power of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua, he called us back to it, and now we're regaining that heritage back. So let that stranger or the son of the stranger not say, the Lord hath utterly separated me, has completely separated me from his people, which would also be, my people, because this the perspective of a stranger, which is also an Israelite. And the reason that I looked into this word separated is because here it says, as the example we looked at, both owners were trying to separate their dogs, right? If one dog is 1 mile apart from another dog, you you cannot separate those dogs, right? Separation happens when something is already together. That's literally you cannot separate something that's not together. Then it's not separation. It would be the opposite, which is joining, right? Or just pushing them further apart. But when you separate something, it has to have already been together. It has to have already been one. That's where the term split up or break up comes from. How do you break up, like in a relationship? How do you break up with somebody you were never in a relationship with? Right? How do you divide something that was never together? You don't. So for someone here to be separated from the people of the Lord, they had to have been a part of the people of the Lord to begin with. Okay? And we know that throughout the process of time, either through migration or captivity or some calamity, we've had the separation, of Israelites heavily. So you see a lot of that during the intertestamental period into the New Testament. But here, the Lord is basically exhorting, saying, you're an Israelite, whether you are born in the land, born knowing the customs, like, you're familiar with it all or not. Don't think that the Lord has completely cast you off. Okay, because when we read the latter verses, it'll say, because if you follow the ways of the Lord and you seek the Lord and you join yourself to the Lord, you will still gain that deliverance. In fact, you will be considered in the eyes of the Lord in a higher position than those who already knew and were associated with the Commonwealth of Israel, but weren't basically joined to the Lord or following his ways as you were. Okay, and that's like how the concept of the elect overrides everything else, because you have Israelite foreigners that are of the elect, and similar to during the time of the New Testament, you had Israelites that were living like heathens, living like Gentiles, being referred to as Gentiles, but they were of the elect, right? Some of them were of the elect, versus you had Israelites who knew they were Israelites, born and raised in the customs, and they weren't of the elect. Okay. So, continuing, it says, neither let the eunuch say, behold, I am a dry tree. Now, we know when you read the scriptures, especially even going into the time of the New Testament, there's mention of different kinds of eunuchs. Yeah, I believe Yahushua said that right there. Some that have made themselves eunuchs for the Lord's sake. So in that case, it's not a eunuch that has had their parts cut off, right? For the ones that make themselves eunuch for the name of the Lord or for the work of the Lord, those are like a mental eunuch, right? You make a decision not to deal with women so you can focus solely on doing the work of the Lord. But here in this case, this eunuch is more probable, or probably in reference to one that actually has their parts cut off. Because as I mentioned, I am a dry tree. And what happens with a dry tree? It can't bear fruit and it withers away. Now, if we pull this up in the NLT, specifically on that part, it says, and don't let the eunuchs say, I am a dried up tree with no children and no future. For thus saith the Lord Yahweh unto the eunuchs that keep my Sabbaths and choose the things that please me and take hold of my covenant. Right. So even though you may be a eunuch, or you have your parts cut off, or you've been separated, because when we go to the book of Deuteronomy, is it 21? No, it's not. It's not 21. It's let me just see. Parts. See if I can find where it's at. I know it's in Deuteronomy, but I need to find the. Let's see. Member. There's a law on. There we go. Deuteronomy 23. So as it says, he that is wounded in the stones are your testicles, or hath his privy member cut off, which your privy member is your rod. Okay. So and that's usually what happens to eunuchs, because put it in a position of, say you have a kingdom, you have a eunuch, and the eunuch is like a one that watches over maybe the women's quarters or whatnot, right? They would make sure that they couldn't do anything there for security purposes, and they would cut off their parts. But here it says in the law, right? Having one of those shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. Right. So when you go back to Isaiah 56, there's a reason why it's using the examples of a foreigner or a stranger and a eunuch, because they would be considered, at least from their perspective, they might look at it as, they have been separated, they've been cut off, like they're sort of just abandoned, for lack of a better word, compared to those that weren't in their condition, right? And the Lord is saying, if you, regardless of what your case is, regardless of what you may be lacking, because that's what it also spiritually represents, right? They that are lacking, which really is all of us now, because none of us are perfect. But the point that the Lord is making here is that if you keep His Sabbaths, right, which signifies following the ways that the Lord has instructed us to do, right, and choose the things that please me, you live after the ways of the Lord and walk after His heart and do that which is pleasing unto Him, and take hold of His covenant, right, the deal He made with us, and honor it the best way you can, then even unto Him or unto them will I give in mine house and within my walls a place and a name better than of sons and of daughters. See? So the sons and the daughters are, they're born, they inherently have a place in the house, right? They have their own rooms, like from the actual carnal example, they have their own rooms and whatnot. As to a eunuch, right, or a stranger, but the Lord is saying here, if I value those that do my will. And that's why Yahushua also said, who is my brother? Who is my mother? Right? Those that do the will of my heavenly Father. Okay? Those are the true sons of God. So that's what the Lord is emphasizing here, which is like being obedient to the Lord and following His ways, doing that which is pleasing unto Him is what He values most. And if you do that, He will give you a position above basically any other. No matter what, and this is once again in the realm of Israel, no matter what walk you may be coming from, and if you're of the elect, then you are going to do that. And that's why the elect have the position that they do. Right? So it says, I will give them an everlasting name. So do you mean, because this is also, as we're going to read on down, referring to the strangers as well. So do you think the Lord is going to give heathens an everlasting name that shall not be cut off? No, this is something that's reserved for the nation of Israel. And as I always mentioned, starting with the elect, okay, because they are that this is a part of the package of salvation. And that everlasting name, which comes with glory, is also going to come with everlasting life. Also, the sons of the stranger, so it mentioned the eunuch, and now also addressing the stranger that joined themselves to the Lord. Once again, this is only something that's going to be done by Israelites. And even when you look at, for example, in today's time, even amongst Israelites, not all of them are sincerely joining themselves to the Lord. It's easier to be said than done. Because when people actually find out what the Lord requires, who the Lord actually is, they find out that some of them don't actually want to join themselves to the Lord. For whatever reason they that might be. To serve Him and to love the name of the Lord Yahweh, to be His servants. Everyone that keepeth the Sabbath from polluting it, and taketh hold of my covenant, even them will I bring to my holy mountain. And where is that? Jerusalem. And make them joyful in the house of my prayer, or i.e. the temple. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices shall be accepted upon mine altar. For mine house shall be called an house of prayer for all people. And these all are Israel. Okay, like that is because that access to the house of the Lord is going to be given to Israel. Now, as we're reading here, right, the Lord said he's going to bring them to his holy mountain and make them joyful in his house of prayer. Okay, and this, as we're about to experience, Lord willing, we be of that number of that elect, right? You have precepts like Baruch, I believe the 4th chapter, that mentions the children of God being gathered and being brought to Jerusalem, right? I think it's worded, "O Jerusalem, look about thee," toward the east, or so on. Thy sons, whom thou sentest away, come gathered by the Holy One, right? And now we know that in this time, the house of prayer, or the temple, is not a physical building, right, but rather a spiritual one, which is symbolic of the elect, or the house of David. And the burnt offerings and the sacrifices being accepted are also likened onto, this stranger, or this eunuch here, which would also represent the elect, right? Because they are the ones who would satisfy these conditions that are mentioned. But their offerings, or their sacrifice, or them, would be accepted of the Lord. Verse 8, the Lord Yahweh, which gathereth the outcasts of Israel. And why would he need to do that? Because Israel has been scattered all throughout, all the four corners of the earth. And the Lord is gathering them first by this word. But we're considered, right, they're considered like outcasts because they were cast out. But the Lord is gathering them first by this word, and then ultimately physically. So it says, the Lord Yahweh, which gathereth the outcasts of Israel, saith, yet will I gather others to him, beside those that are gathered unto him. These others that are going to be gathered to him, beside those that are gathered unto him, are still referring to Israelites. Okay, and we saw a lot of this, right, during the time of the New Testament. Even Yahushua mentioned. Matter of fact, if I cross-reference this, I think I should be able to find that precept here. Should be in the book of John. There it is. Right. And other sheep I have, which are not of this fold, them also I must bring. And they shall hear my voice, and there shall be one fold and one shepherd. See, jumping down also, John 11:52, and not for that nation only, but that also he should gather together in one the children of God that were scattered abroad. Okay, they're the ones. The Lord is not gathering heathens along with Israelites. He's not going to do that. Okay. So when he says, yeah, will he gather others onto them? Those are the ones that were scattered, the ones that were not of the original, like not of the current fold that needed to be brought in. That's why I said beside those that are already gathered onto him. And this is all dealing within the realm or the domain of Israel, because you have some Israelites that were further off gone than others, but they still needed to be gathered back and brought back onto the Lord, because you have elect amongst them. Verse 9, all ye beasts of the field. So now it sort of switches themes a bit. The first 8 verses go into, regardless of if you're an Israelite and you sincerely believe on the Lord, whether you're a stranger, whether you're a eunuch, whether you're lacking or not, if you with your heart join onto the Lord and do the things that are pleasing unto him, which would ultimately make you of the elect. But if you do that, you'll gain that salvation, you'll gain that deliverance, and you'll be accepted of the Lord. But in verse 9, okay, now the Lord here calls for judgment as he begins to speak on these false watchmen that really just take advantage of the people rather than being sincere shepherds or watching over the flock. So as it says, all ye beasts of the field come to devour. Yea, all ye beasts of the forest, right? So that's a call for judgment against who? His watchmen are blind. Whose watchmen? The watchmen of Israel. And these are likened unto those that are looked to for, as leaders, right? Or looked to be shepherds over Israel. But the majority of them are what? They're blind. They're all ignorant, right? They're without the true qualities and knowledge to be a sincere watchman of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. And a good majority of them are self-proclaimed watchmen. But as it says, they are all dumb dogs. So now they're liking onto blind watchmen. Who sets up a watchman that's blind? The whole point of a watchman, it's in the word watchman, is to watch. In a physical sense, a watchman needs to be able to see, right? And they need to know, one, what are they looking for? What is a threat? What to do when that happens? Like, they need to have all of these things on lock, because it was a very key role being a watchman. So if you're blind, it doesn't make sense. Okay? It's like putting a crippled person behind a driver's wheel, expecting them to drive. How are you gonna have somebody that's crippled be a taxi driver? As it says here, they are all dumb, and it's this analogy is used to signify that these self-proclaimed watchmen are not qualified to be watchmen over Israel. They are all dumb dogs. They cannot bark. So imagine having a watchdog that doesn't bark. It does just there, just lays there, rolling over, as it says, sleeping, laying down or lying down, loving to slumber. When you get a watchdog, the point is for it to be able to alert you if something is going on. So what's the use of a watchdog that doesn't bark? It doesn't alert you. It just lays there and sleeps all day. And that's how the Lord is likening these false prophets, these false leaders who put themselves in the stead of a watchman, of a watchdog, but do the contrary. Yea, they are greedy dogs, which can never have enough. And you see that today. They use the appearance to gain the trust, right, and the recognition of the people, but driven by greed. They benefit off of the ignorance of the people rather than actually watching out for them. And that manifests by them either being paid off, right, to teach false doctrines. Because when you're teaching a false doctrine, you're not sincerely watching over the flock, right, to warn them of the things that are coming. But instead, you'll notice that a lot of these other groups that, once again, proclaim themselves to be men of the Lord or teachers, they value and they extol the superfluous things of Israel above the actual requirement of being a watchman. The more important aspects that will make you wise unto salvation, right? That will prepare you for the times ahead. That'll tell you, hey, this is what's coming. Start preparing. They don't really go into that, and in fact, they'll come against us for going into it. But they'll put value on more of the carnal things, parties and festivals and the festivities. Those are the things that they put emphasis on. Make sure you get your ticket. Make sure you buy this. Maybe make sure you do that and this and that and this that, and the third. But all the important things that's on the back burner somewhere, and that's because they're driven by greed. And as we're about to read, it's to serve their own belly, not to go in the way the Lord has prescribed for us, right? So as it says, yea, they are greedy dogs which can never have enough, and they are shepherds that cannot understand. And that's why they constantly butcher the scriptures, but they do it in an attempt to give the covering that they are some leaders set up by the Lord, so people can keep following them, because the more following they have, the more they can satisfy their greed. They all look to their own way, everyone for what? For his gain. See, so they're all doing their own thing so long as it suffices them. One example was Al-Azhar of the Sakari, and now you see where he is now. Well, if he was a true watchman, then once he lost that image, right, and that gain, he would have continued watching. But he didn't. Now, yeah, I'm done with it. Now I'm going, I'm not really a part of that anymore and all that, cosplaying and all that. Yeah, because that gain stopped. And it was being driven by greed for more and more and more. Right? So reading that again, they all look to their own way, everyone for his gain from his quarter. I'm going to pull this up also in the NLT. Like greedy dogs, they are never satisfied. They are ignorant shepherds, all following their own path and intent on what? Personal gain. This is something that has been happening. If you see it now, then it was back then. Why? Because it's the same spirits that did it back then are back here again doing the same thing. Just like you have prophets back here now doing, prophesying, those same prophets were back then in the ancient world prophesying. So everybody comes back in their lot. So if you see it now, then it's happened before. And that's why King Solomon said, there's nothing new under the sun. What is now hath already been. And that's why it is now. History repeats itself because it's the same people coming back doing the same things. Just in a different time, with different attires, with different dialect. But the spirit remains the same. Verse 12, come ye, say they, and I will fetch wine, and we will fill ourselves with strong drink. And tomorrow shall be as this day, and much more abundant. Now, imagine a watchman who's supposed to be sober-minded, who's supposed to be diligent and vigilant, and constantly watching for the sake of the people, overseeing the flock. And this is the mindset that they're in. We're going to basically just enjoy ourselves, get drunk, and just chill. Today and the day after that and the day after that and the day after that, and just be in that mirth party, relaxed spirit. What are they really watching? And the damn sure ain't their wine. Right? So this is to signify like the mindset of complacency and comfortability that they're in, because to put it like this, they entered the game not to be, not to fit the job description, but just to have the uniform. And from there, they like those that just chill on the job. And then whenever anybody comes around, they look like they're doing something that they should be, and then in reality, they're really not. Okay. And that brings us to the end of the book of Isaiah, the 56th chapter. So just keeping in mind, right, this is dealing with Israelites. Some people try to use this chapter and some verses in here to justify heathens gaining salvation, but always, acknowledge that the scriptures make it very clear that salvation is only for the nation of Israel. So with that, Lord willing, this was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Rechak Kodash. Until next time, Shalom.